What is up, guys? My name is Matthew Hankwitz, and you are watching Actual Exotic Cars. American dealerships are one of the biggest, rotten, and legally corrupt scams, frankly, in the entire world. Today, I will be discussing why exactly, how you get ripped off exactly, how you can fight against the system, how we can hopefully in the future change the system. So a few years ago, before I guess I was always interested in the car industry, but before I really dove into it and into the laws and understanding the way things worked, at the gym one morning, I remember meeting a guy who was talking to me about how he was between jobs, but it was no big deal because it was already halfway through the year, and he's already made over six figures selling cars halfway through the year. And I thought this was very odd that somebody would be able to, for obviously a very minimal entry job, and the idea that somebody at a dealership, a car salesman, would be able to make over six figures in a very small town to the point where they only needed to work half the year before they could start searching for another job. I thought that was very odd. So that was kind of the beginning of the journey, and I'll discuss why exactly that is possible towards the end of this video. So to understand basically how U.S. dealerships work, how they differ from foreign dealerships, and everything that goes into them, and the laws and lobbying and all the corruption and scams that go into it, we need to start at the beginning. So in the U.S., there's a term known as the Big Three, and I guess I'm from Michigan, so this is very familiar with me, but most people realize there's three big auto companies in the U.S. that rule everything, that reign supreme. So we have Ford, everybody knows Ford, GM, General Motors, and then there is Dodge Chrysler, Fiat Chrysler, Stellantis. They change ownership all the time, but anyway, they also are a big U.S. company. So that is the big three of U.S. automotive. Now, there's many in the past that have come and gone, and every single time that happens, or there's competition to the big three, one of them gets squashed. And the reason why is because the big three are too big to fail. So basically, way back in the day, in the 30s, all these dealership laws were put into place to protect the main automotive producers, which makes sense, right? Cities like Detroit, for example, many cities in the Rust Belt, Cleveland, Flint, you can keep on going, Pittsburgh, all had some sort of auto producing facility all throughout the state of Michigan, all throughout the Midwest. Just because these companies were headquartered in Detroit, the factories for these were all over the Midwest, all over the U.S., frankly. And to protect these jobs and protect these people, these dealership laws were enacted in the 30s. And basically, back in those days, if you wanted to buy a car, you'd go between different dealerships, compare prices, compare what they had, and that's what you had to do. It's not like they have the internet like we have now. So that's why they're created, not only to protect jobs, but back in the day, a dealership you'd go through, it's kind of like walking through a store. What do you want? You want this, you want that. Compare, contrast, and see if you actually want to purchase a vehicle. Well, the thing is, these three companies reign supreme. And I don't know if you heard about '08. I know that was a big deal with the whole GM bailout. They are too big to fail. Regardless of what these companies do, even if they do go bankrupt, the government will bail them out. They are too big to fail. Well, other companies, such as American Motors, that used to own Jeep, Studebaker would be another one. International Harvester used to make vehicles. They can fail because the U.S. government doesn't care about them because they don't make money off of them. So all these other U.S. automakers that have come and gone have failed, but the big three, regardless of what they do, regardless of how many stupid decisions they make, they cannot fail because the U.S. government refuses for them to fail. So that is that. A very good movie that I recommend anybody watching this video to watch. I will put it up on the screen right here. Tucker, the Man and His Dream, basically goes around one of these companies that were trying to compete with the big three and did so in a very successful way in my mind. And basically, using corruption and legal laws, the big three blocked Tucker out from entering the car market. And I think this movie did a fantastic job of detailing everything that happened. But you got to realize how many years ago that this happened, and it's still going on today. They're all in bed together, and it's a very sad movie. It made me very mad, and it made me disgusted that I even owned a GM vehicle to begin with, just knowing all the corruption and everything that goes into squashing the little guy and all the competition. So that is why out of a country of 330 million people, there are really only three big automakers in that market. So that is the history of it. And again, all has to do with lobbying. And a good example of that, an article that I have found, and this brings me into one of the companies that is changing things up right now, which is Tesla. And right here, you can see in an article that with Tesla vehicles, they were barred from being sold in the state of Michigan. Well, I wonder why. Michigan, Detroit, automotive big three. This is basically the heart of the rot, if you will. And the governor at the time, Rick Snyder, literally signed a bill in 2014. That's not that long ago, 10 years ago, clarifying and strengthening that the existing laws that prohibit direct sale of new cars. What this means is getting a car, going online, which is most people when they're going car shopping, the first thing they're doing is they're going online. They're not randomly going to dealerships, not knowing what's out there, and purchasing it and having it delivered to your house, which is the way it should be, honestly, like Amazon for cars. And basically in 2014, Michigan government was like, nope, we're not doing that. You got to go to a dealership. And basically screw Tesla over because they're trying to change the game. And obviously that takes away from the bottom line of not only the big three, but also the government's pockets. So that is the big dealership issue. So also on top of that, why do you think that the big three really doesn't make cars anymore? And what do I mean by that? When I mean cars, like, yeah, there's sports cars. You can still get a Mustang, a Camaro. You can still get a Corvette. But passenger cars, why did they completely cut? You think in the future with emissions and all sorts of things going on, that an SUV or a truck is very impractical. And I advise, if anybody here hasn't been to Europe before, I'd strongly advise it. The idea of driving an American vehicle, I shouldn't say an American vehicle, but an American truck or SUV in Europe just looks stupid. Like, it's all these little efficient cars that do the job, and then you go over to the U.S. It's all these vehicles that just don't, I mean, if you drive a half-ton pickup truck through Europe, it just looks stupid and out of place. Where over here, that's just the opposite. You drive a little, Fiat 500 or something, you look stupid. So it's completely reversed. And the reason for that is, if you actually look here at the dutiful entry import taxes. First thing, the reason why we don't have many foreign trucks, I think Toyota is probably the only big company that imports them. I know there's some Hondas, but I would say Toyota is really the only big. It's not like you're really seeing the European trucks at all. I know Volkswagen makes them, they don't import them. Couple mini trucks from Japan, and that's pretty much about it. But look at the tariffs here. So for an auto, for a Toyota or a Honda or something like that, that's 2.5%. That's not a lot. But for trucks here, for dutiful entry into the U.S., it is 25%. So if you're a foreign company and you want to compete in the U.S., and first thing, why are these different? Why is it 25% for a truck and why is it 2.5% for an auto? That makes no sense to me. So basically, the U.S. government is encouraging automakers to not produce cars, or else its tariff wouldn't be so low. But they're encouraging them to produce trucks because the foreign market can't compete with it. And again, trucks, there's a lot more parts, they're a lot bigger, they're a lot less efficient, and you can kind of put the pieces together in your mind. It doesn't make sense at all. So there's definitely some backroom stuff going on with that, and it kind of even emboldens the claim of everything that's going on right now with the dealerships. Now, benefit to dealership. So I don't want this entire video just to sound negative and blah, 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 and, poor us. So benefit to dealership. Now, there are some benefits to dealership. If you have not seen my video on my car from Japan, the follow-up series that I've been making, my actual exotic flip series, I made a full video basically saying, called I Got Lemon from Car from Japan or something like that. I would strongly encourage you to watch that. Basically, long story short, I bought a vehicle from a Japanese auction online. I got it shipped all the way over here. It was overheating and it was burning oil, and I'm still in the middle of getting everything fixed, and it's costing a lot more money than it should have. This vehicle is supposed to only have 60,000 miles on it, no problems. I paid extra for them to do a full inspection, and I basically got lemon, and right now I'm literally having to redo the entire vehicle to fix everything on it. It is single point fuel injected, you're going to go through a lot of more gas mileage. You can clog up the catalytic converter. It's just a plethora of issues that I don't want to deal with. And like I said, the idea, if I sell this car, I'm not going to sell a car that's overheating. I'm not going to sell a car that's burning oil. And unfortunately, I got this vehicle from Japan. It's not like I can really give it back. And if that happened at a dealership, I would have lemon law to protect me. I would have warranty if it's a brand new vehicle, or if I get a used vehicle with some sort of warranty on it. Assistance with the purchase. So let's say I was not a car savvy person, not everybody necessarily is. I guess there is some worth or value of having somebody show you vehicles and what you're looking for exactly and help maybe guide you through that process. Now, in my mind, I think this is kind of an outdated concept because you can do all this for free online and you don't really need to be stacking the pockets of people at the dealership for this basic information. Another thing too, a lot of car dealerships, they're trying to push you into getting crap off their lots they get paid off of it. They could care less if you like it or not. Vehicles nowadays are made to replace. They're not necessarily made to work on. That's my biggest issue right now with new vehicles, but that's a conversation for another video. So service, another thing too, you have warranty service. You know you're gonna have a certified mechanic that supposedly knows what they're doing, especially with this specific type of vehicle. There's a gigantic difference between working on, let's say, a Tesla and let's say working on a diesel Ram pickup truck. Gigantic difference. And if you want a mechanic that specializes in that, granted, you're going to be paying dealership prices. But again, if you have, like, let's say a 50,000 mile warranty or something on your vehicle, anything ever happens, there is the peace of mind of that. In my mind, though, how much more are you paying to have that? And also, with that sense, why couldn't a dealership just deliver the vehicle straight to your house? Oh, let's say the dealership didn't even exist. Let's say GM, for example, just had service centers everywhere. And you could just take your vehicle to the GM service center, kind of similar to what something like a Tesla is doing. And you don't even need to have the physical dealership. So that is my answer to that, but that is definitely something worthwhile if that's something you're worried about. Now, the con of dealerships. Now, this is a whole segment. I didn't realize any of this existed until I was trying to create UAZ America. So if you don't know what UAZ America is, basically it is the only company that specializes in selling UAZ and other Soviet 4x4s into the U.S. market. I started this around last February, last March. And we are fully operational right now. We have our first shipment, should be coming out in a few days. I'm pretty excited for that. But when I was looking up all the laws, I wanted to create this company in the U.S. Well, I'm an American citizen. It would be easy for me. Everything's in the U.S. Well, I started reading the dealership laws. Again, I live in the state of Michigan, so I'm just going to be reading off the Michigan ones. Though from what I've read, almost every state is extremely similar with this. So these are the dealership laws. If I wanted to sell vehicles, basically import vehicles as UAZ America into the U.S., this is what I would have to have. So anything over 4 vehicles, I need to have the dealership license or some sort of brokerage license. And this is basically everything right now that I need to have in order to get that. I have to have property. It is a requirement. I cannot have an online-only dealership. This property has to have a square footage. I have to have either service department or a service contract. I have to be on a main road with clear lighting, clear signage. It's extremely strict. I have to be open at a certain amount of hours every week. They are forcing you into the caveman ages. You have to have a physical presence, even though everything nowadays is online. If I want to buy a vehicle, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go online. Let's say I want a 4x4, some sort of all-wheel drive vehicle for the winter. I want a stick shift because it's fun and I want good gas mileage. Well, I'm going to go online. Okay, Chevy doesn't really offer that. Ford doesn't really offer that. I'm not even going to waste my time with them. Oh, wait, Subaru does offer that. Oh, cool. There's this thing called WRX. I'm going to go through the website. I'm going to look through all the packages. I'm going to find everything that I want. This, that. Ooh, heated seats could be cool, blah, 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 blah. And then when I go to check it out, guess what? I have to go to a dealership to pick it up. I have to pay all the dealership fees because guess what? They have to buy overhead at that dealership. So I have to help pay for the taxes, the property, the building, the service department. Even if I don't do anything through them, that salesman who I buy the vehicle from is going to make money off of me. They're making thousands of extra dollars taking out of my pocket so they can pay for all their dealership stuff that I didn't want to begin with. They haven't done anything. I've done all the research myself, but I have to pay for it. Completely ridiculous. So this is, again, revised 2023, so this is updated. And this is how strict it is. Not less than 30 hours per week. 15 of the 30 hours must be between the hours of 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Premises, you have to have a repair facility. It has to meet zoning requirements. Again, there's a certain square footage. Equipped with office furniture, working utilities, you're extremely restricted. So the reason you see dealerships the way that you see them is because they're so restricted. There's this little box that they have to fit inside. And this is all updated stuff. And I just pointed out the laws in 2014. Not only did they not repeal these laws, they made them even stronger because guess what? The big three is scared of Tesla now. So this is everything you're dealing with. And this is why American vehicles are so stupid expensive because you have to pay for all this garbage. So this is everything to do with dealerships. Again, wholesale vehicle dealerships, which is a whole different thing. Basically, wholesale means that you're not allowed to buy direct, you're not allowed to sell directly to a customer. So you buy the vehicle, then you would sell it to a dealership. So in my mind, this is what a dealership should be: is a wholesale. Why do we need an in-between person? We don't. You can do you can do the research yourself, or you can look through some online guide or something. I don't need to pay a car salesman 3-4 grand or whatever percentage they're going to make to do all of that for me. And actually, if you even look deeper into that, car salesman's salary, crooked car salesman is kind of like a common phrase, I would say, in American speech. And if you just go online and go car salesman's salary, 74 to 130K a year, 96 to 160K a year, 150K, I've literally read things with some of them making over $500,000 a year, basically telling you to buy crap so they can get it off their lot. You don't need to be lining their pockets with over 6 figures to do something that you're doing all the research yourself anyway. Who's just blindly going into a Ford dealership, not doing any back research at all, and I don't know what to buy, blah, blah. It's like, if you're paying 40, 50, however much money you are paying, you should at least have a little bit of idea of what you're buying before you even walk through the door. So in my mind, this is extremely concerning, and it's not just them, it's not necessarily their fault, it's the way the system's made. And the best comparison I have is, in my mind, a car dealership's like a Blockbuster. It's like, why do you need to go to the physical movie store when you can just go, and again, if there were stages to this, there's Netflix, Redbox, and it's like, now I can just go online and stream. And when I mean Netflix, it used to be through the mail, then it used to be Redbox, go to the store or something and get it. It's like, now I can just go online and stream everything. I'm still paying for it. Somebody's still making money, but it makes no sense for me to go to the video rental store to rent a video. It's just kind of an outdated thing. Same thing with people pumping your gas. Well, most gas pumps, I can just do it myself. It's not that difficult anymore. And I feel like this is another one of those outdated things that there's so much money in it. There's so much power at these companies that they're doing anything they can to grip and hold and suck the money out of the consumer so they can line up their pockets. So when I think car dealerships, that's what I think about. It's an outdated concept that we need to shake off, but there's too many people relying on this for income. So on to the next topic for conversation. So if we go again through, this is the dealership manual, and on top of this, there's also a dealership code that's like 300 pages. I'm not going to bore you with that. So when I was going through Who Was America, it's like, okay, I definitely don't have the potential of being a vehicle dealer because just of all this ridiculous land space, 1,300 square feet, display of you have to display at least 10 vehicles of any kind that the dealership is licensed to sell, an additional 650 square feet for customer parking. Like I said, this is ultra stupid, it's specific, and there's all these license fees and tests you have to get, and it's absolutely ridiculous. So that is for a dealership. I've already covered wholesale dealerships, the difference with that. Other vehicle dealerships, 2 dealers at 1 location, so on and so forth. And then on top of that, business hours, change in business hours, all these things you have to do. Some of them you even have to like make a posting in the local newspaper, which I don't even know how many people even read newspapers anymore. So some of these laws, like I said, even though it says revised 2023, they're extremely outdated because it's an outdated concept in general. So on top of that, even if I wanted to be a vehicle broker, so a broker means you'd be the in-between person. Somebody says, hey, I want an UAZ Hunter, low mileage, and I want it to be like in the 90s. Like that's what I'm looking for. So let's say I find this vehicle, I purchase it on their behalf, and I ship it to them, and I get a little bit of a fee. So UAZ America is technically a vehicle broker. To do this in the U.S., I still have to have an office building. I still have to have signage. I still have to be open a certain amount of hours. I still have to have, now it's less than the dealership requirements, but there's still requirements. So to even be the person that helps you find vehicles or exotic vehicles, or let's say you wanted a Lamborghini or something, you might want a vehicle broker to kind of act as your agent, somebody that's an expert in these vehicles. And even for that, there's still very strict requirements that you have to follow being in the U.S., which is absolutely ridiculous. So that is everything. Again, these are the vehicle dealership location license applications. Going out of business requirements, like there's all these things, inventory. And you got to realize with dealerships, all those vehicles on the lot, they bought those. So they have a special license where they can buy vehicles directly from the manufacturer, then they resell them to you. So they're trying to get them off the lot ASAP. They have an incentive to do whatever they can in their power to get those vehicles off of the lot. So, next on. Again, this is where I find that Tesla, for example, and is completely different and game changing to the fact that they literally will. So basically, Tesla, when you buy a Tesla, it actually gets it gets delivered directly to you. You do everything online. You basically put in your address, everything, and the idea is it gets delivered directly to you instead of going through a physical dealership, which the local laws and the politicians are having a dizzy over because guess what? It undermines the dealership. So there is definitely a big problem, and as there's more and more Teslas, I know, for example, that's a big issue in the state of Michigan is you cannot buy a Tesla in the state of Michigan. So all these people are going to Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, wherever they can get Teslas to stick it to the man or stick it to the big three, because all these politicians, lobbyists, and people are worried that they're going to be out of their little cash Ponzi scheme. So that is the entire thing with Tesla. That's why I feel like they are different than everybody else, and I actually find it encouraging that they're willing to do this, because they are really the only U.S. company that I can think of right now that even does anything of the sort. So ways around. Obviously, biggest thing, if you don't want to go through all this, if you don't have to pay all these extra fees, dealership fees, this, that, paying this much over MSRP, all you have the service fee, blah, 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 stop buying at dealerships. You vote with your wallet. And if you have a problem with paying all these extra fees, then don't. So it's like, okay, what can you do? So number one thing, I guess in the U.S., I already discussed Tesla, how they're a little bit different. You can order directly from them. You might have to go through another state, depending on your state. Like right now, obviously, I'm in Michigan, so everything's pretty strict. Depending on your state, you might have to go around them. So that is definitely a good option. Not everybody wants an EV. Not everybody can afford one of these. And regardless, some people have negative feelings toward Elon Musk or whatever. This is not a political channel at all. I know we're discussing a political subject, but I am basically just trying to explain the facts here, and you can make your own predispositions. That would probably be the easiest solution, at least as of now, in my mind, would be probably going towards the Tesla option. Now, even Tesla themselves has had a ton of fighting with the big three, and honestly speaking, if Elon Musk wasn't such a big figure and so rich, there's no way he'd be able to do this. He would have went the way of Tucker, unfortunately. So here's a clip here basically of him stating that he gets blocked out of all this government stuff.
Didn't invite Tesla. Invited GM, Ford, Chrysler, and UAW. An EV summit on the White House. Didn't mention Tesla once, and praised GM and Ford for leading the EV revolution.
Because he's not a part of the big three, the gentleman's club, if you will, which is kind of sad to see given everything that he's done with the car industry and how far he has moved it forward. So that is that. Gray market, that would be the next big one. So when I mean gray market, back in the day, there's kind of an issue with a lot of people, let's say, getting stationed out in Europe or whatever, bringing vehicles back with them. And that was kind of hurting the U.S. car industry. I'm not saying necessarily that you shouldn't be able to do that. I feel like you should be able to do that, but there should still be something in place where you can't just bring over necessarily everything you want. There should be some sort of standard, somewhat. So basically what the U.S. did, which is kind of different than a lot of countries, like the U.K., for example, there's like this whole list of standards you have to follow. The U.S. has something called the 25-year rule. And some states are different with this. Some states, such as California, Hawaii, even expand on that even more, and that's a conversation for another video. But basically, the 25-year rule means is that you can import any vehicle pretty much as long as it's original, unmodified, and at least 25 years old. It doesn't have to follow EPA standards. It doesn't have to follow the safety standards. When I say gray market, it basically means a vehicle that wasn't necessarily designated or designed for the U.S. market. So that is a gray market vehicle. For example, I owned an UAZ. My Fiat Panda is a gray market vehicle. Both of those were imported from abroad. My Lotto, when it comes here, Lotto is never sold in the U.S. That is technically designated as a gray market vehicle. So that's what gray market means. It's legally imported still. It's not black market. It just wasn't meant for the U.S. market. So if you want to find a gray market vehicle, and some of them are pretty cheap, then the biggest, actually I should say the easiest option as of now, and some companies that I think have figured out some sort of way of getting around the insanity of U.S. dealerships, are TCV and Car from Japan. And there's some other ones that do a very similar thing. Basically, getting vehicles from Japan into the U.S. is extremely stupid easy. Car from Japan, for example, I've done a video in the past about, but basically I can search a vehicle. let's say I want, well, let's say you want this vehicle for some odd reason. Let me put that up on the screen here. You want this Nissan for some odd reason. I can literally choose what port I want it delivered to. So let's say I want it delivered to New York. It'll automatically calculate the shipping, and this is how much I'm paying for the vehicle, including shipping. If I want reinsurance, I can add that as well. That is not that much extra. So that is how these companies work, and you literally buy a vehicle from your couch. Now, biggest problems with these, I already covered this earlier, is one, and that is one, this is one advantage for the dealership. You're not inspecting these vehicles in person. So when I bought my vehicle from Japan, for example, I bought a Fiat Panda, I did a full video on that, full review on that. Again, if you want to reference back, I'll put probably a pop-up or something like that here. I got lemon from Car from Japan video. Basically speaking, you might get lemon, and there's nothing you can do about it because you don't have any legal protection. This is a Japanese company. It's not an American company, and as far as I know, it's not necessarily a dealership, and I don't know what type of standards they have to hold. So if, let's say, I spent this amount of money at a U.S. dealership to get a vehicle, which good luck finding a vehicle for $8,500 at a U.S. dealership, but even if I did, if there's issues, I would still have the possibility of taking it back. So that is an issue with these, but they are a lot cheaper. I think the biggest thing, and I don't know, especially nowadays, we've got the Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace especially, a lot of the used car market, there are a ton of like right-hand drive Japanese vehicles out all over, and that's because they're so stupid cheap. So some of these mini trucks, for example, $3,000, $6,000, $3,000. You're getting a 4x4, some of these are even diesel, a 4x4 diesel truck with low miles. You can get a manual transmission if you want, and it's like a few grand. That's it. Like literally, it's a few grand total. Now, the biggest issue I've had with this, other than the fact that it is easier to get scammed, granted you're paying a lot less money with these type of websites, these auction websites, is they deliver it to the port, and that's it. So as a consumer, it's a lot more difficult. At least at a dealership, somebody's going to be sitting there, you can get a little paperwork done. They're going to do anything they can to get their money. So at least you have that going for you. We're doing this, you're going to have to go through the customs process. Once it's in the port, you have to have either some sort of escort or something to get it out of the port. You have to pay a trucker to get it out of the port. That's what I usually do. So there are some more things that you have to do. It's definitely possible. I have made a ton of videos on the past about how to do this process. It's definitely not very difficult. It's just some more things that you have to do. Again, it's coming from abroad. Another thing, too, service-wise, to buy a vehicle from a dealership, if you have any issues, you can take it there, get a service. These vehicles are what they specialize in. With some of these vehicles are more odd, and it might be a little more difficult finding somebody if you're not necessarily a car-savvy person or you don't like working on your own stuff, to find somebody willing to work on these vehicles to begin with. Now, what I will say is just because you get a vehicle from a dealership, they want you to buy a new vehicle. They don't want you driving an old vehicle. I took my Fiat to the local Fiat dealership, and they told me, and I literally quote word by word, your vehicle is too old for us to work on it. We don't work on anything from the 90s. That's what they told me. We only work on new vehicles. So even if you buy, let's say you buy a 90s GM product or something, that's not necessarily a guarantee. They want you to buy a new vehicle every 4 or 5 years. So if you drive a vehicle, take care of it, own it for a long time, get your money's worth, dealerships don't want you to do that. They don't. Now, and some of them will frankly, flat out, just like with me, refuse to even look at it, which is absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, this is some of the Japanese ones. Now, let's say you want a European vehicle, for example. What do you do then? If you want to get a gray market European vehicle imported, this is something I've struggled with myself. My UAS, for example, I actually flew over there and imported it myself. That is a difficult process. I don't expect most people to do that, especially for something like a vehicle. Wheels for Reels, I have the page right here. It's something that I have seen people have a lot of success with. I have not personally dealt with them at all. I want to say they operate from like Romania or something like that. But they have imported a ton of vehicles, including a lot of Eastern Bloc vehicles. I would imagine they'd be able to do Western Bloc as well. And they offer basically they'll ship the vehicle all the way to your house, and that is something that I definitely think is pretty cool. Eastern Bloc, European, British, American, right-hand drive. So they have a plethora of vehicles to choose from. So these are some options here. Like I said, they will ship straight to your house. So that is another option. UAS America, which is my personal website, my personal company that I started in March. That is another option that you have that I think is pretty cool. And the thing that I like about UAZ America is it's all the lessons that I learned from buying vehicles from Japan or a vehicle from Japan, and we make everything turnkey, simple, easy. So what I mean by that is when you go to current listings, and these are some of the vehicles, just sample vehicles that we have for sale. Let's say I want, let's see, a Buhanka here, $1,200. This is how much the vehicle is without us bringing just the vehicle. That's what this is. You will get nice, clear pricing, quoting. You'll have basically spreadsheets. There's no hidden costs or anything. We don't do any of that. And it will literally be delivered straight to your doorstep with all required paperwork, like literally to your doorstep. And actually, it's going to be, we can give it, you're getting a fully restored vehicle. You're getting a fully restored vehicle that's pretty much everything brand new for a fraction of the cost of what it would be at a dealership. And it's actually easier than going to the dealership. So the reason I made my company in Georgia is I already went through all the U.S. laws. For me to follow all those laws, even just to be a broker and not be a dealership, I mean, I might be talking about $500,000. And the problem is, if I have to pay that much, first thing I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get vehicles off the lot. And if it's a crappy vehicle or if it's not the right vehicle for you, I feel like it's pretty garbage, pretty trash of me to try to give you something that you don't need or you don't want. On top of that, I have to pass those prices on to you. Because let's say I have $500,000 invested, having to have all this stupid lot and all this service, this, that, and everything. I have to have 10 vehicles on display and all this other garbage. Again, I have to pass those costs on to the consumer, so you're paying more money. So in my mind, this is kind of like the best bare bones. Georgia doesn't have any of those laws at all. I've actually spoken to lawyers over there, and that's why we are located in Georgia, the country of Georgia. So that is something going through UAZ America. So if 4x4 is something you're interested in, I think we're going to start importing just because we already have the structure and layout set. Passenger cars here pretty soon, so if that's something you are interested in the future, please let me know. Now, gray market, is that something that the government's going to go after? Again, you saw with the Michigan laws example, when Tesla became a threat, they changed them and they went even harder on them. Will that happen with the gray market? It's possible. So I don't know if you guys heard with the mini truck bans in the state of Georgia. So these little K trucks, here's just a small article here, are getting banned. And basically what's happening is people are getting their titles rejected for not being street legal. So imagine going through all the effort and work of buying one of these K trucks. Again, $2-3 grand, whatever, and let's say a couple grand shipping. By the time you pay customs and all that other stuff, you're gonna have to pay your 25% customs fee because it's a truck. And then doing all of that, and then basically being told, oh, it's not street legal, even though it is street legal. And what I find absolutely ridiculous about this is I think the biggest issue is because the trucks and SUVs are kind of the last fashion of American vehicles, since we don't really make cars anymore, and most cars I would say are either Japanese, I guess Korean, or European, Asian, or European for the most part, unfortunately. And the last bastion of American vehicles, they need to protect them, so they're basically breaking the laws to make these illegal. And here's some states that are actually engaging with this right now that are trying to block the registration of these vehicles. And one of the biggest ones I remember seeing in Georgia is, like I said, they were literally ripping up people's titles, which is absolutely disgusting in my mind. And they're saying it's over safety, but you can still drive a motorcycle. So it's like you can't drive a mini truck, which can go 60 miles per hour. You're fully enclosed. But they have no problem with you driving a motorcycle. So to me, it's very obvious what they're trying to do here. They're trying to cut down on the gray market. So there's no guarantee of how long the gray market will last or the 25-year rule will last. So the Japanese imports, I want to say last year, this is just off the top of my head, there's around 4,000 cars or something that were imported gray market. So the numbers are only increasingly growing, which doesn't surprise me given the dilemma with car dealerships, the increase in U.S. car prices, and how simple and easy it is to use some of these websites such as TCV and or Car from Japan and the plethora of other ones that are available. So it is definitely a very interesting topic to me, and the gray market vehicle, well, the whole gray market vehicle thing is definitely a very interesting topic. So moving on here, what can we do in the future? Is this all doom and gloom? How do we get around this? And so on and so forth. So the biggest issue in my mind is, I guess, lobbying and politicians. Is, like I said, the big three blocks out anybody just because of all the money that they make from competing or doing anything against them. Like I said, I think the only reason Tesla is even doing anything right now is because Elon Musk. If it wasn't Elon Musk, it was some no name, then they would have went under years ago. So that's a big issue, is just with American political. This is not a political channel at all. I do not want to be a political channel at all, but that is definitely an issue with these vehicles, and that's why all this stuff's going on. Another thing too, Rust Belt cities, corruption. I don't know a lot of these cities where most of these vehicles are made or produced. Detroit, Flint, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, go through the Midwest, and if you kind of look at what's happening with these cities, there's a reason it's called the Rust Belt. So there's a lot of stuff going there. Again, a lot of it's political, and unfortunately, that's just the way that things are. So Tesla, I feel like Tesla is definitely changing the game with these, regardless of what your thoughts are on Elon Musk. They're definitely changing the game on the way that people buy their vehicles. And like I said, in my mind, it should be something that should be able to go online, get whatever features I want, press buy, get it delivered to my house. That's how it should be. Simple, easy, don't even have to leave my couch. And I definitely feel like Tesla is really the only American auto market that's striving, either doing and or striving towards doing that. But again, it's an uphill political battle. So in conclusion, American dealerships, what are my thoughts? Well, I definitely think it's something that is an outdated concept with the advent of the internet. I feel like dealerships need to be more. I definitely think there's so much money in it, and it's such a protected occupation. Do I think they're going to go anywhere in the next few years? Probably not. As we evolve as society, maybe. Like I said, they're just so politically protected. I'm obviously not a fan. I don't like going to them. I just feel like everything's fake. You're paying way more than you should. And the sad thing of this is let's say you really want like a Mustang or something. Like you want a brand new Mustang, blah blah blah. It's like given the fact that it's through Ford, you have to go through a dealership. So it's like you have to bite the bullet. So you really have no way around it. I think in my mind it was America. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to create it, is I wanted to make some sort of competition or something like that. Something that's more fair, I guess, towards the average American. I mean, you can literally get a 4x4 vehicle, pretty much updated, simple, easy to work on, not made to replace, made to work on for around 10 grand, which I feel like is extremely competitive. Like I said, I'm trying to do the same thing with passenger cars. But unfortunately, in the U.S., that's just the state of affairs. And the sad thing is, in other countries, like the country of Georgia, for example, dealerships don't have any of those laws that they have to follow. So that saves consumers a lot of money. But that's just the time in the world that we live in. Hopefully in the future something awesome will happen. But that is pretty much it. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time on Actual Exotic Cars.